why don't you just grow a pair? You know, I'm sure you've heard that phrase before, and we're going to talk about growing a pair today on the Finding Traction podcast. Welcome aboard. Well, it's good to be back. I took a month off for the summertime. Good self-care. That was the plan. Didn't do any writing, and have been working on a major project. I've been building this massive fence. We live next to a park, and so I've been building a fence on one side of the property. It's about 7 feet high, and I'm doing it completely from scratch. There's a verse in the Bible, in the book of Luke, about before you sit down to build a wall, no political implication intended. Before you sit down and build a wall or a tower, you should estimate the cost. And I should have done that because I'm about not even halfway done. My holidays are over, and it's a huge amount of work. And I'm just going, what have I gotten myself into? So I'm about 40% done. So what was a summer holiday project is now apparently going to become a fall project. So there we go. So yes, let's talk about testicles. You know, I thought it would be a great way to get back into our podcast to talk about testicles. And, you know, this whole idea of growing a pair is a word picture. Somehow maybe the size of our testicles or growing them from scratch somehow refers to being a manly man. I don't know where the phrase came from. It's like talking about the person who has a pair of brass ones, that kind of idea. Talking about testicles, it's interesting. I don't know if you may be aware of the dish called prairie oysters. It's bull testicles, essentially, and it's a delicacy in some parts of the world. Things are always a delicacy in some parts of the world, and I've never eaten them. Hopefully none of you send me some in the mail or anything, but I'm told they have a gamey quality. They're like breaded venison. I've had venison before, and moose and bear. I do live in Canada after all. But some claim that prairie oysters or bull testicles taste more like calamari, which is kind of like fried rubber or seasoned rubber. So there you go. So maybe some of you who have tried prairie oysters can send me an email at bandofbrothers@shaw.ca, and you can let me know how they are for you. Let me just make a couple comments before I get into this deep dive into the idea of testicles here. It's great to be back. If you haven't been on our website, it's bandofbrothers.care. And this whole idea of this course and this whole idea of this podcast is helping men find ways away from addictive behaviors, specifically porn and porn behaviors, towards life and relationships they've always wanted. And I really encourage you to check out the website. It's a way, or to connect with me. I've been connecting with people. I'm meeting with men right now across North America, nobody outside of Canada and the US. But you can get a hold of me at Band of Brothers at shaw.ca. And I've been working with men in terms of individual mentoring. I've also been connecting men with the course called Finding Traction. And it's just a great way for you individually or with other men to start taking steps towards the freedom you've always wanted. So there's a bit of a plug. I'd love to connect with you. I'd love to hear about your journey. And if there's any way I can help, please let me know. Okay, so let's get back into growing a pair. Well, when I take that phrase, growing a pair, and apply it to our recovery, this is what the word means to me. The word for me is all about the word courage. You know, growing a pair is all about becoming a person of courage. Now, let me give you, as I thought about this, here are some examples of what growing a pair or being a courageous person means for me and what it's meant for me in my steps of recovery. The first one is simply the courage to grow up. You know, one of the things that compulsive pornography does, addictive behaviors do in general, is they just stop the maturation that happens in our life. It's like somebody, you've all had the play and pause button. And when we're caught in an addiction, it's like somebody takes their finger and hits pause on the development of our life. And so you might be 24 or 34 or 54, but in one sense, it's like you're still responding and reacting as if you were 15 or 17 or 19, because what happened is when you took a deep dive into these addictive behaviors, it's like the development stops. And it takes courage to say, you know what, I'm going to do whatever it takes to hit the play button to start journeying out of the childish or immature ways that I've become stuck in. That takes a set of brass ones, in my opinion. You know, to be able to deal with life as it really is. AA has this phrase, to be able to deal with life on life's terms. And that's all about the courage to grow up. Here's a second one that I think growing a pair has to do with the courage to take off your mask. You know, we all wear masks to one degree or another. We all have the image we like to protect and project. I shared a week or two back about some of the core myths that had kept me stuck in my addictions. And I actually felt like there was an M word that I should have started with, looking back. And I think I started with masturbation, but the one that I should have started is the myth of me. And that is where I think that's the biggest myth that keeps us from ever starting out on this journey of courage. And that is that I can deal with this on my own. You know, if you're dealing with it on your own, you never have to take off your mask. You can always try to, I'm just going to deal with this. I'm going to get over this. I'm going to figure this out on my own. It takes courage to take off your mask and to become known. You know, I've been leading a group, a Saturday morning group here in Western Canada, Fraser Valley, for 15 years now. And it's always fascinating to see the very first time a new guy feels like, you can just see the vulnerability and the fear when the first time they walk into one of our groups. And we just try to say, you are a courageous person. Kudos to you. You know, you have taken really the biggest step in this journey is the step to become known by other people. The courage to take off your mask. It's, you know, I would say another part of taking off our mask is obviously taking off the mask with our wives. The courage to be honest with your wife. So many of us, you know, when we're in an acting out cycle, we hide from our wives, and we do it under the lie or the guise of not hurting her. You know, and the reality is when she does find out that we've been hiding things from her, it becomes even worse. It takes courage for men to be known in their weakness by their wives. You know, that for me, that's just a huge step. My wife has said, I want to know if you're acting out. And for me to have the courage to say, I'm not doing well, or this is what happened, that takes courage. Here's a third area where I think we need to grow a pair, and that is the courage to take responsibility. You know, it's so easy for us to say, well, I'm just, you know, got a super high sex drive, or I've got so much stress in my life, or you don't understand what it's like to be with, you know, in terms of my wife, or what it's like to be single. All of these are just really subtle ways of blame shifting, of saying, well, it's not really me. If my situation, my circumstances would change, then it would be much easier for me. You know, you don't understand in my situation how hard it is. And that's where it takes courage. Sometimes taking responsibility is, you know, what the 12 steps talks about, making amends, where we are able to look honestly at the hurt and betrayal we've caused with that person we are sharing our life with. You know, that takes courage. The courage to take responsibility for the hurt and betrayal that we've caused. Here's another area where I think we need to grow a pair, and that is the courage to heal up. You know, maybe, you know, a kick in the nuts is probably the most vulnerable thing that can happen to any guy. You know, the idea of pain is always associated with having something happen to your testicles. But, I would say when it comes to real pain, it takes real courage to be open and to lean into the pain in our lives. Some of those formative hurts and wounds that we continue to either react from or reflect in our present behaviors. One counselor, it's been said many times, you can't heal what you can't feel. And in one sense, if you're not willing to deal with those areas where there's real deep places of wounding in your life, you will never be truly set free from some of these habitual chains in your life. And that takes courage. A number of men that I'm working with, sometimes for the very first time, they talked about situations where they were abused or molested by, a family member, by a neighbor, by an uncle. And for some of them, it's been the first time they've shared some of those things in their lives. The courage to say, this has been the pain of my life that has marked me. That takes a huge courage. So there's another example of growing a pair. Okay, this next one could be really controversial, but let me throw it out there. And I got to explain this one. The courage to stand up to your wife. You go, whoa, where are you going with that one? Okay, now you can't rush past the last one. The idea that you're taking responsibility for the hurt and pain and betrayal that you've caused. And if you jump to this one and you forget the last one, this is going to go really sideways really quick. If you are blaming the other person, if you're not taking responsibility, dude, you are going to be living in a basement suite faster than you can imagine. So let's go back though. I want to talk about the courage to stand up and what do I mean by this. It's interesting. There's an old psychologist, Carl Jung, back about a century ago, and he did this whole study around how husbands acted around their wives. And listen to what he said. He said, the women are the mothers of their husbands as well as their children. And he basically talks about the passivity of men and how many men were really looking for a mother wife. Carl Jung put it this way towards what he observed in American or husbands. They only want to be the obedient son of their mother wife. Well, that's interesting. Apparently, now, if any British people listen to this, you can really push back on this. Apparently, a lot of British husbands call their wives mom. I don't know if Mike Pence really calls his wife mother like Jimmy Fallon says, but maybe one of you who know Mike can let me know that. But here's where I'm going with this. If we are acting around our wives like they're our mothers, that is never a good thing. Now, I'm not talking about being macho. I'm not talking about some sort of Tarzan, Jane kind of, idea where you are trying to puff your chest out and say, I'm the head of the house and my wife always, agrees with me kind of thing. But here's where I'm going with this. The goal of your marriage has to be mutuality. You are in this together. You are teammates. You have to pass the puck back and forth. This is Canadian hockey season. We're back and you have to do that. And here's sometimes something I've noticed with men who screwed their marriages up with an affair or with porn or something. They seek to rebound in their lives and restore their lives and their marriages by becoming incredibly passive around their wives. Some of them almost become like whipped puppies where they go, I've screwed up in my life and I've screwed up in our marriage. So from now on, all of my needs and opinions and thoughts around our life, the kids, the house, our future, all of those I'm going to let you make. I'm just, because I've screwed up so badly, my needs aren't important anymore. when it comes to them doing proper self-care. Well, those needs aren't important anymore because I've screwed up our lives so badly. That is not mutuality. One of the guys in my groups talks about being a whipped puppy, and one day he finally said, enough. Yes, I've screwed up my life, but I have some opinions and ideas. And his wife looked at him like, oh, you've got a little bit of your roar back. You see, here's the idea. I think as we begin to move away from porn and that, we begin to develop some core confidence again. Our testicles begin to grow, so to speak. And we begin to you do what Michael Cusick talks about, moving towards a woman with strength. I'm not talking about any sort of macho-ness. I'm talking about being a person of confidence and strength and expressing our masculinity in a way that serves our wife, but also expresses our needs as well. So I think that takes courage to actually live in that role of mutuality with our lives and our wives. Our lives and our wives. You got that one? So a couple more. The courage to grow a pair and to step forward. One of the things that you start realizing as you come into recovery and you start getting some clean time is you go, you know what? I can do this thing. That's one of the things I've asked people, when we start, have you ever had a period of sustained sobriety in your life? You'd begin to develop the courage to move forwards. You begin to develop a core confidence. By the way, I didn't really get that from my dad. My dad never told me you have what it takes. But now as a father to two boys, and my daughter as well, but two boys in their late 20s, one of my goals in my life is to be able to give them a core confidence that they have what it takes to move forward with confidence into their lives. So to grow a pair means to simply say, you know what? I can step forward in my life. And here's the last one. I'm excited when I see people having the courage to begin to help others. I know things are going to really begin to take off in people's lives. When some of the guys I work with, I begin to hear that they're now helping their friends, or they have someone that they're meeting with who is not as far as they are. And they now have the courage to go, you know what? I've got something that I can actually give to somebody else. And I can actually, I'm not where I necessarily want to be, but I'm certainly not where this person is. And I can help share a few things that have got me to this place in my life. So there's all a bunch of different ideas around courage, around growing a pair. So here's to your life towards growing a pair. God bless you. Great to have you on board, and it's good to be back. Again, I'd love it if you'd subscribe to this podcast. I'm also on YouTube, so if you're listening to this on YouTube, please subscribe to that. So hopefully now we'll get more podcasts coming quicker now that I'm back in the saddle. So God bless you, and we'll see you next time.